Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. That is right, riding solo today. Going to be doing a bit of a mailbag. Keen to get your questions. So if you want your Dynasty questions answered, them in the comments over on YouTube. I'll be answering 100% of questions that I get before I finish the show. And while you're there, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, and we'll get this thing going. So I've got a few questions pre-submitted by our members from the Discord chat to get things kicked off. So let's start over with them. So first question we're going to be answering today is from our very good member Danny Lawrence. He asks, if you don't follow college football, what is a quick way to get in idea of the quality levels of positions coming in the following season? There's no real I guess swift answer to this. I think the easiest thing is to consume Devi content. There's some fantastic guys out there. Obviously, we've had a few of the guys from the Devi Royale on the Dynasty show over the last few weeks. What Kev, Jay, Christian, and all others are doing over there is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, consume Devi content. I myself put together cornerstone rankings, so that's looking at last year's rookie class, this year's rookie class, and next year's rookie class. So that gives you an idea in terms of ranking those three classes, where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are. And the truth is that a lot changes during the college season, so it's difficult to project beyond probably the kind of top, I'd say eight of top 12 for next year's first round. People will talk about second and third rounds, but really that moves so much during the college season that it's difficult to get a true answer on that. So yeah, to sum up, go look at some Devi rankings. You can work out quite quickly if there's people that, is there a cluster of receivers at the top of the rankings? Is there, good depth at the running back position? So this coming year, 2025, there's a few good options at the running back room. I don't know if I'd say there's any true elite superstars in there, but I think we're going to have 4 or 5 potential fantasy starters. Wide receivers looking good. QB, massive question mark. And I think that for your rookie drafts, quarterback creates depth in rookie drafts. I think that, as soon as you add 4 or 5 first round quarterbacks, you saw it this year with the rookie draft. As soon as you added 5 rookie quarterbacks in the first round of fantasy drafts, suddenly those guys that are going 6, 7, 8 are suddenly falling into second round picks. So yeah, go and consume some Devi content. There's some fantastic guys out there, and they'll get you on your way. The next question's from another of our Sanctuary members, RB Raven. Remember, if you are listening, watching live, and you want your questions answered, get them in those comments below. If you have a team full of studs at skill positions and Anthony Richardson is your QB1, would you look to tear down off Anthony Richardson to a less boom bust option, someone like a Goff perhaps? So I guess I think this is a fantastic question, first of all, and I think it really ties in nicely with the question around how to approach quarterback in Superflex dynasties. Yes, we'd all love to roster 2 elite options and sit back, have some decent depth, and not have to think about the position. But those elite quarterbacks are so hard to come by. They're like hen's teeth. You're never going to be able to trade for them unless you massively overpay. So I think you need to find a way to try and combine your assets in your quarterback room to add up to a QB1. There's a few different ways you can go about this. There's the volume approach and there's the boom bust approach. And I think that the volume approach is saying, right, I don't have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, but I know if I roster 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks, I can play the matchups and I can cobble together QB1 production from a bunch of QB2 type players. We see it every year. The correlation between kind of matchup dependent play at the quarterback position is more predictable than any other position in fantasy. So if you can, cobble together Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins, maybe some cheaper guys like a Will Levis, Bryce Young, or Baker Mayfield. That's your QB room. If you play the matchups well, and yes, there's going to be some weeks where you get it wrong, but the chances are you could potentially outkick your coverage for those assets in that quarterback room because you've got the volume play. And yes, the volume will also help with bye weeks and injuries and things like that. But really, we're looking at it as a matchup week. Superflex dude on Twitter, John Hogue, he talks about his QBX strategy where he's looking to get 5, if not more, quarterbacks. And that's exactly that. Is you don't need the elite options if you can play the matchups and cobble together the volume. The boom bust approach is someone like an Anthony Richardson, where there is a chance of a range of outcomes where Anthony Richardson is the overall QB1 in fantasy. There is also a world where he gets injured, he doesn't succeed, he doesn't, he has struggles with that accuracy that we've seen in college, and therefore his fantasy production tails off. But hopefully, we're shooting for maximum outcomes here of going to chase a title. Now, in this situation where your team is full of studs, you're loaded, yeah, it's a little bit risky having Richardson as your QB1, but I'm fine with that. If you have 2 or 3 more stable options, I don't think you need a stable QB1 if you've got, a Kirk Cousins or a Matthew Stafford as your QB2, QB3. I like to think of, in an ideal world, if I can't go and get a superstar quarterback, I want to build a range of types of players in my QB room. I normally talk about my QB2 and my QB3 balancing each other out. If I've got a boom bust QB2, someone like a Jaden Daniels who's got incredibly high ceiling but could be, a massive bust and out the NFL in 3 years. If I've got that as my QB2, then my QB3, I'm looking to go up and go super safe. I want a Jared Goff or someone like that. It's all about balancing out, and you can tie in the QB1 there. So yeah, if you've got Richardson as your QB1, I'm not necessarily looking to tear down of him, but I'm definitely wanting safer options at QB2, QB3. I don't want Anthony Richardson with Jaden Daniels, because whilst the high end outcome is massive, if my team's loaded, if I've got studs elsewhere, I don't need that maximum outcome to kind of get across there. We're going to dive across. I've got a question in from Twitter. If you are watching on Twitter, it's much easier if you get your questions in on YouTube. I can add them in and I don't have to type them out myself. So from John McGlynn, he says, Chris Godwin or the 201 in a super flex tight end premium 12-team league, deep rosters. Chris Godwin is my 4th or 5th receiver and could probably use a running back. So I guess, first of all, we'll talk pure values. So I'm going to try and do something a little different. If we're watching live, this may go mess up. Hopefully, you can now see my trade value chart. So this is available to all members, silver and gold tier. You get access to all my trade values, my trade calculator, all my rankings, everything like that. As we can see here, if we go down, I have got Chris Godwin worth 10 points. Okay, I value an early second round pick in a super flex draft as 15. So just speaking purely in terms of value play, I would rather the 201 than Chris Godwin. However, if you're needing a running back, I don't necessarily think the 201 is the way to go. I think, yes, you could potentially get Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks maybe at that 201 spot, but I don't necessarily think they're going to give you an answer at running back this year. If you're looking for a running back, I'm presuming you're a contending team. I would much rather, if you need to go Chris Godwin to the 201 to then send the 201 to go and get a running back, maybe that's the right move. I just don't think the 201 and whatever back you can pick there is going to answer your running back question. So maybe go Chris Godwin 201, go out and buy Derrick Henry, or can you go and get Joe Mixon plus or something like that? That's the kind of move I would be looking to make if you're needing a running back to go and hopefully help you contend. We're going to dive back to the the member questions. Sorry, so a long-winded one. but bear with me because I think it's a very good question here from Gary. So he says, at what stage in the season are you confident in pushing on for a title and maybe giving up younger assets picks for veterans, but maybe losing some dynasty value? Is it as soon as playoffs are secured, so it's guaranteed pick no earlier than 107, or a bit more aggressive and chance it before that? So I think this is a fantastic question. I think it's something that so many people get wrong in dynasty leagues. Okay. So the first caveat is this 100% depends on if your league has a trade deadline or not. I've spoken a few times. I'm dead against trade deadlines. I don't understand why you do it. I think it just limits the marketplace. And I think it can add so much to a dynasty league to have those trades open all the way through the playoffs. Okay. If your league has a trade deadline, I want to leave it as long as possible. I want to probably be doing those deals 2 weeks or a week before the trade deadline. If you play in one of my leagues and it doesn't have a trade deadline, what I am looking to do, okay, if you are a true contender and you think that you can win a title, why are you going to buy a player for picks, let's say, or younger assets that could potentially get injured before you need him? Okay, if you are a true contender, you shouldn't need to go out and buy, let's say, Keenan Allen in week 5 of the fantasy season, because you should be able to make the playoffs without Keenan Allen's points. If you're a true contender, if you need Keenan Allen, then I'd question: are you really a true contender? Because if Keenan Allen's getting you to the playoffs, are you just going to be one and done? So I want to leave that trade, that aggressive win now trade to go and get the veteran, as late in the season as possible. I probably only want to be looking to buy Keenan Allen at the playoffs. I want to be trying to tailor my lineup for the playoffs as late as possible, because if you go and spend your, I know Keenan Allen's not worth a first, but let's say a Cooper Cup. Like, you're going to go and spend your contenders first to go and trade for Cooper Cup in week 4 of the fantasy season, because I'm going to make the playoffs, or even, week 8, I've made the playoffs. I'm in. I know I'm going to be good. I've got a weak spot at wide receiver 4 flex. I'm going to go and spend my first to get Cooper Cup. Doesn't matter because it's late, so I'm going to be a contender. Happy days. What happens if Cooper Cup gets injured next week? You now need to go and find another asset to go and spend to improve that spot. Whereas if you wait until the playoffs, can you wait until week 14? Can you wait until week 15 and go and make that same trade? You know Cooper Cup's going to play for you the next week. Yes, the price might be a little bit more, but I'm happy to pay a first and maybe I have to add in a third. Maybe I need to add in a second and get back a third, something like that. Because I think that the premium you're paying is almost injury insurance. It's when you go and buy a car, you add insurance. It's like, yeah, no one likes paying it, but actually, if you then go and wreck a car or get in a crash, that insurance is there to help you out. Think of that extra little premium you might have to pay at the trade deadline as the insurance of it's insured you from getting injured during the season. And you can guarantee, okay, you might really want Cooper Cup, but if you can't go and get Cooper Cup, if the guy who's got Cooper Cup's asking for 2 firsts, well, there's going to be at least 5 other teams that haven't made the playoffs that are looking to sell their veterans, that are looking to sell their players for picks, because they're not going to make the playoffs. And at that point, you've got more teams who are likely selling than at week 4 or week 5 or week 8. So I think the longer you can wait to push those chips in the middle, you save yourself that injury issues, but more importantly, B, you give yourself more trade partners because there's going to be more teams eliminated. So I always say you want to wait as long as possible to make that win now trade, because the worst thing you can do is send your assets for a player that's then going to be sat on your bench. Remember, this is a mailbag. If you've got questions, if you're watching live, get them in the comments below. I'll be answering 100% of those questions. Right, we've got a few more. We've been having a debate in the Discord today, so we're going to ask: do you think you could take Lewis in an eye fight? I think I could take Lewis in any fight. I reckon I'd, just like Scrappy do, I'd hold him at arm's length. I think I've got him. We're going to go back to the member questions. 2 more random questions that the guys asked me. Truth is, I'd love to see both these things happen. Sadly, I'm not sure anything is going to happen, But yeah, I'm not sure either of us are going to win. I would love it if I think my answer is going to be Crawley to win the FA Cup, just because of what it would do to the town. Let's be honest, New York doesn't really need it. Whereas I think if Crawley won the FA Cup, it would be pretty special. We'd certainly see something that's never happened to the town and everything. So yeah, that would be pretty special. Um, and then I love this question. I can't remember who asked it in the Discord, but would I rather win a high stakes league or a home league? This is 100% home league. I think basically, look, yeah, you can win some high stakes leagues. That's pretty awesome. But the bragging rights of winning a home league is better than any amount of money, isn't it? Let's be honest. I'm in my home league is a 14 team redraft league with all of my mates that I played American football with at uni. I think that being able to win that, I've happily won it twice. I'm the reigning champ this year, and being able to rock up to my live draft and basically tell everyone, yeah, I'm the champ, wear a crown, walk around with that chest out is pretty special. And yeah, there's some people that we've fallen out friendship over the years, and being able to brag over them is pretty awesome and special. So yeah, give me that 100% of the time. Some more questions. So Rory's back in the chat. How do you see the Seahawks room right shaking out? I think it's probably going to be a 60-40 split. I think we're going to see Walker used largely as he has been last year. He's going to be a little bit more boom bust. I was impressed with him last year. I think he did better than last year, but I don't think he was as good as perhaps people think. I think Charbonnet was exactly what we thought he would be. He was solid. He was reliable. He kept things ticking along. He was, on first and second down, he got that 4 or 5 yards and kept him in manageable situations. So I think that we're going to see Charbonnet work in more than people are probably willing to admit. And for that reason, I quite like Charbonnet as a little cheeky buy low. I think, didn't really do much in his second year. People are probably fed up of him on their dynasty rosters. I don't think anybody's holding too much value. So if you can get him for a late second, maybe you can send a future second for Charbonnet and a third, something like that. I quite like that as a move, because I do think he is going to have a role this year. And I think that if there's a Walker injury, Charbonnet could absolutely be a league winner. I think he is a decent, competent NFL back, and I think there's a lot to be said to rostering as many of those as you can. Tom's in the chat. Again, if you want your questions answered, get them in that comment section below. I'll answer 100% of those questions while we're live. Favorite spot to pick from in a third round reversal startup. So I reckon this is the number one question I get asked in basically whether it's on Twitter DMs, whether it's in Discord. I feel like this question gets asked all the time. So I would say, I feel like I'm cheating slightly. I like to pick as late as I can, but still securing an elite quarterback. Now, to some people, that will be picking 1 or 2 because they want Analog Mahomes. To some people, that will be picking 1, 2, 3 because they want, for me, Lamar or maybe Jalen Hurts. For some people, it might be that they can pick as late as kind of 6 or 7 and they can get Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, or whatever. Some people might go even further and still class, Jordan Love or Trevor Lawrence or Kyler as elite options. So have that question, have that thought process. And normally for me, it ends up being around that 6-7 spot. I think you get the benefits of the third round reversal. You don't get screwed over by that. You still secure that elite quarterback, and actually your roster then works out really well. I think you can kind of potentially tie in some of those wide receivers. I know I did it last year in a startup where I was like, right, I've got 7 elite quarterbacks, but someone's going to take Justin Jefferson, so I'll pick 8. I was very much sweating over it for a little while, but ended up getting Justin Jefferson going the pick before me, which meant I got my quarterback at 8, so I was very happy. But yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a bad point. The one thing I don't like doing, I know a lot of people dive in and grab the 11 or 12 pick straight away. I don't love it because I just think it ties you in to basically either reaching on that second or third tier at quarterback, or just accepting that you're missing out on the elite quarterbacks, and then you could go maybe 2 wide receivers, and it just feels like you're always chasing your tail at that point. So I don't like too early, because I think 1, 2, 3, yeah, you get that elite quarterback, but you get screwed over by the third round reversal. But if you go too late, I don't particularly love it either. So Rory's back in the chat. He has said, "Do I ever look to handcuff a running back?" No, is the true answer. I don't believe in it in Dynasty. I think that we've got big enough rosters and benches that you don't need to worry about it. I think it's a low value play. I would rather go and take 5 flyers at other teams' handcuffs and shoot for that upside where you've got the roster spots that it doesn't matter how many running backs you roster. If you're looking, if you consume my content, hopefully you're leaning towards loading that roster with as many bench and third string running backs as possible, because they are so injury dependent, and we're looking at those volume based positions to hopefully play. But I think it's a low value play. If you've got Jonathan Taylor, do you really want to go and spend an asset to go and trade for or acquire Trey Sermon? Not really. If you've got him on your roster, fine, because nobody's probably going to give you anything of value to bring him in, but it's not a move that I'm necessarily looking to make. I'm not going out and paying a premium to acquire a handcuff, or I'm not spending rookie draft capital to go and get Jonathan Brooks because I've got Chuba Hubbard or something like that. So Best Ball UK, what's the biggest, I presume that's mistake, new Dynasty managers make? I think it's trading future picks. I think the more and more I play Dynasty, the more I feel that the way people value future picks is just wrong. I think I see teams trade 2-3 years out too early to go and try and build this super Dynasty roster and say, well, I'm going to be good for the next 3 years. And it always comes back to bite you. I think that if you can build consistently, and as I was talking earlier, hold off trading those future assets until you actually need to do it. And when you need to do it is at and around the trade deadline or the playoff point. I think if you're trading away 2 future firsts and depleting your asset pool to try and be a contender, you're generally chasing your tail, and you're only a contender because you spent those assets. I'd rather make sure I was a contender before I'm spending those assets, because I just think it's poor asset management to spend so much in advance and then spend your entire time chasing tail or the off season trying to replenish those rookie picks. Another one of our members, Gary, he's in the chat. He's saying, do you have any Dynasty assets that that you refuse to quit, even they're likely never going to be fantasy relevant? Yeah, I think we all do. I think we all absolutely have plenty of assets that we refuse to quit. I'm trying to think of some of mine off the top of my head. Jeff Wilson is probably still sat on a lot of my Dynasty rosters. I refuse to quit him. Devontae Parker was one. I think it was 5th year breakout for him, so maybe I finally got proved right on that one. But yeah, look, there comes a point where if you believe in a player, if you try to move out after 1, maybe 2 years, but miss that sell window, you're not getting anything for him right now. There's a few guys in the chat. Rory suggesting Rashad Bateman. Yeah, still believe. Yeah, not ready to give up on that one. Elijah Moore. I loved Elijah Moore as a rookie, but I just didn't particularly love it on the Browns. So yeah, maybe I don't think I've got many shares of Elijah Moore left. I did a pretty good job of selling high, sort of middle of last season once he flashed a little bit last year. And Tarek does follow up with a question. He's saying, speaking of that second tier of QBs, are you worried about Dak this year? Not much out of CD. Not really. I think that there's enough in that offense to keep him sustained. I think that, yes, whilst there's not an elite second wide receiver potentially for fantasy, I think Brandon Cooks is still a good, competent NFL wide receiver too. I think, again, Jake Ferguson, whilst I don't love him for fantasy this year, I think he is still an above average receiving tight end. And it's kind of like between those 3, and yeah, maybe you can chuck in some Jalen Tolbert. Quite like Ryan Flournoy as a rookie UDFA. I can't remember if it's UDFA or late round pick, but I think there's enough competency in that wide receiver room. Whilst it might not be elite for fantasy, I think there should be enough for Dak to produce. So not concerned about Dak. Where I'd be more concerned about Dak is where he's going to be playing next year, because I'm beginning to think it's more and more not going to be in Dallas. I'm very concerned that as I think I sent out on Twitter a little while ago, that quarterback contract I think might begin with a 7 per year. I just think he's going to get a massive payday, and I'm not sure if Dallas are going to do it. So, yeah, I still like that for this year. I still like that for Dynasty, because I think wherever he ends up, there's going to be a decent weapons. And I think the way he operates, he is so good mentally, and he's so good getting the ball out of his hands super quick that I don't have any concerns. James saying 2-2, yeah, still believe on 2-2. Don't think I've got any shares, to be honest, but yeah, still believe, refuse to quit. He flashed, so I count that as a win. Stephen saying, who's going to be the wide receiver going to become fancy playoff time in Dallas? I think it's Brandon Cooks. It's probably a boring, unsexy name. I don't think there's anyone that's going to be of great fantasy value. But I think they're going to be an NFL value enough to see there. So basically, the answer is in Dallas, it's CeeDee Lamb, because I think we could see him potentially approach that receptions record that Michael Thomas set a few years ago. I wouldn't be shocked if we're seeing him see obscene target numbers this year, maybe touching up towards sort of 200 targets. Rory suggesting big packing off Andy is Ferguson a sneaky buy. I don't really like him. I think there's some worrying underlying numbers. I don't think that where he's being valued right now is worth paying what he's going for. I'm just trying to pull it up right now. He's my tight end 16 right now, and in June ADP, he's going as QB tight end 13. So yeah, I just don't think you're going to get that ceiling. I would rather pay and acquire 2 tight ends in that 20 to 25 range than go and spend. You're probably having to send a second for someone like Jake Ferguson. I'd rather go out and acquire, potentially cheaper guys like Isaiah Likely or Tucker Kraft or Michael Mayer, Cade Otton, hell, even Taysom Hill. Because I just think that they've all got similar ceilings. They've all got similar potential to pay off. So that's where I'm going to go with that. Stephen, another one of our members, thank you for joining us. Who's more likely to flop over the next 2 years? Caleb, MHJ, or Brock Bowers? That's a really tough question. I think the answer is Caleb. Just purely because, look, quarterbacks are what we always used to say, quarterbacks are a 50-50 proposition. I don't think they are anymore. I think it's probably a 40-60 proposition. I think more quarterbacks bust than succeed. So, look, I think Harrison's a stud. I'd be absolutely gobsmacked if he wasn't at least, a very good NFL receivers. I think Brock Bowers is such a freak with the ball in his hands that I've got very few concerns there. And I think that whilst we see busts at wide receiver and tight ends, it's not normally those elite guys. I know everyone wants to slag off Kyle Pitts and, he's a bust. Let's be honest, he's not. Like he's been a good NFL tight end, a good NFL receiving tight end. Yeah, he's probably not warranted the pick, but he's not been a bust. I think there is a small chance that Caleb is a bust, but there is absolutely a chance. We're sitting here. Nobody thought Justin Fields was going to be a bust. Few people thought Zach Wilson was going to be a bust. There's time and time again where we see these rookie quarterbacks come out. Everybody gets super excited, and then they fall apart. Hell, nobody thought Mac Jones was going to be a bust after his first year. So yeah. And another question from Stephen: which rookie has fallen and risen the most from pre-draft hope until this process? That's a good question. I'll be honest, I'm sort of out of rookie mindset. So yeah, I need to give that one some thought. Who has risen the most? So I guess probably maybe JJ McCarthy, if you're going back long enough. Probably Bo Nix. I don't think I'd have ever suggested Bo Nix could be a first round pick in Superflex leagues, which is where he's going right now. So I guess he's a big riser from the pre-draft process. And then probably Ricky Pearsall has been a sneaky riser. Maybe Ben Sinnott as well. I think being the second tight end off the board in most rookie drafts now, he was a big riser. Fallers, well, Troy Franklin's an obvious faller. I think there was potential he could have been a top 4 wide receiver in rookie drafts. He's going well outside the top 10 now. Jatavian Sanders had a shocking Combine, he fell. That's probably about it. I don't think there was anyone else. Maybe Braylon Allen fell quite a bit from the pre-draft process. But yeah, no massive shocks, I guess, in that sense, but a few decent ones. Rob asking, what are we doing with Javonte? Stock seems so down, but we can't sell him this cheap or just hold. I think you've kind of answered your question there yourself, to be honest. I think basically you need to hold him because I don't think you can honestly sell him for. Can you get a second for him right now? I don't think you can. And look, it might be that he loses that job. It might be he's worth nothing, but the talent is still there, and I think that he's worth potentially at least holding and just hoping out for that hope, because I wouldn't sell for anything less than a second. If you can get a good second, if you can maybe get a second or third, maybe I'd consider selling. But I think there's a range of outcomes that it's worth holding for that sort of value. So don't love the player, don't love the offense in Denver. I like Sean Payton. I think there's going to be some fantasy production there, but I don't necessarily know if it's going to be from one running back. But yeah, let's yeah, I think at the price you've just got to hold your nose, and maybe he just burns a hole at the end of your roster. But I just don't think you can sell him for the potential that he could have. Gary is asking, which NFL team do you think will have the number one pick in 2025? Rory, you're now banned from asking questions because he then suggested it'll be the Jets. I think I'm going to go a little bit left field. I mean, I could easily sit here and say, Carolina Panthers or the Raiders or, boring questions like that. I think there's a chance that it could be the New Orleans Saints. I just think that they're probably 2 years late for kind of essentially blowing it up. And I just think that there's a world where Derek Carr continues to disappoint. I think we've seen that he can't basically function without a good offensive line in front of him because he's scared to take a hit and he doesn't want to prolong plays. And I think that Ryan Ramchick's not coming back. The offensive line has got serious holes, and I think there could be a world where he severely disappoints. So yeah, maybe the New Orleans Saints, and I've also got to throw in the Patriots. Let's be honest, it's quite fun. I've spent my entire NFL following career having to put up with Patriots fans coming out the woodwork and being glory hunters and goal hanging around those Super Bowls. So let's rub it in. The Patriots. I love Drake May. I think there's a world where the Patriots could sit Drake May for the majority of the year, and then they end up securing the number one pick and look to build around him moving forward. Am I out on Olave for next season? No, not necessarily out on Olave. I think he could eat just in terms of volume alone. I wouldn't be shocked if we're seeing him 140, 150 targets this year. I think he's an absolute supreme talent, supreme receiver. I just think there's a world where the Saints struggle to win games because I think that defense is aging. I think the offensive line is poor. And if you're asking me who I think are going to be good NFL teams, those are the first two places I look. It's after quarterback. What's the offensive line? What's the defense? And I think they're both bad there across all three of those areas. So yeah, I think Olave could be good. And let's not forget, just because you're on a bad team doesn't mean you can't put up fancy points. I think that Derek Carr has feasted many a time in garbage time, and that could absolutely happen again this year. We're going to be ending this in about 5-10 minutes. So if you've got any more questions, if you're watching live, get them in the comments below. I'll try and get to them before we wrap it all up. The final question I've got here comes from Allergy Boy 78. Any thoughts on incoming 2025 rookies? Early, I know, but strength of class compared to 2024 and some names to look out for. So I'll caveat this. I'm incredibly early in my process. I don't really dive fully into the rookies until we get to that sort of January, February time. I basically go super deep dive at that point because I don't want to get ahead of myself. Can't watch college football and things like that. So yeah, I can give you some thoughts, but it's kind of early days, if that makes sense. Obviously, wide receiver wise, there's some absolute studs. Luther Burden looks phenomenal. I can never get the name right, but Tatoria McMillan again, and then Evan Stewart. We hopefully see Emeka Ibuka bounce back at Ohio State. I think he's a name to watch. He could fly up boards. Now Marvin Harrison's junior's moved on. Hopefully he could be a stud there. And then there's plenty of potential in the running back room. We've got Trevion Henderson, Quinton Judkins. There is a guy I thought could potentially come out this year, who decided to go back after a fairly poor year. But Raheem Sanders, he was at Arkansas. I think he's transferred now. But he's a big back who could be phenomenal in the NFL. So I'll be very intrigued to see what he does this year. In terms of overall thoughts, wide receiver, as it is, seems every year, looks like there's some absolute studs. Looks like it could be really deep as well. So wide receiver looks great. Running back looks like it's going to be a normal year, much better than this last year where we were lacking for studs, we were lacking for options. So yeah, I think running back's going to be good. No absolute superstars unless Quinton Judkins or Trevion Henderson take over that backfield in Ohio State and become superstars. I think it's going to be good, solid. Probably no first round picks, but maybe sort of a few decent second or third round picks in the NFL draft, which means they'll probably end up being mid first round picks in your rookie drafts. Quarterback looks horrendous. I know there's some Shador Sanders fans, there's some Quinn Ewers fans. Hey, maybe even Cam Ward, after finally teasing to come out for the last few years. I think he's got a lot of tools and could be fantastic down in Miami. If he comes out, I'd be intrigued, but it's looking like quarterback's going to be a weak class, which, as I always said at the top, I think quarterback dictates depth when it comes to the rookie draft. So if you are a contender, I'd potentially be valuing those first round picks a little bit less than a normal year, just because I think 110, 111, 112, they're probably going to feel like early second round picks. But yeah, that is it, guys. Rory's asking about the glory hole. If you've not checked out Tom's video on the running back glory hole, go ahead and do it. It is fantastic and it will help you win leagues, because that is where all the good value at the running back position is right now. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, do it now. Tom is absolutely killing it at the moment with best ball content. He's diving on with Tyler tonight for another underdog draft, and he'll be back in the week with some DK drafts as well. And of course, I'll be back with some Dynasty stuff. We've got another roster review of one of our members' teams scheduled to drop this week, and I'll be doing some more content with some fantastic guests over the next few weeks as well. Thank you for jumping in. Thank you for all your questions, and we will speak very soon.